Uh, male archetypes. Male archetypes here to talk about. Well, I'll give you a backdrop of usually my story to sort things out. Uh, well, I am is basically labeled this, my old style government test, basically a classic Iranian, basically. Except they don't really specify which country I was born in. At least to me, basically. You know. Like, as far as I can figure myself out, like, I was basically born in Romania. How I know? Shock. Actual shock. And not if it basically activates you into something like being a rag or being psychotic. No. Which when I was younger, I kind of experimented with trying to like mobilize myself to force myself to do things more productively. And well, at the end of the day, back in 2020, it mounted me being in a mental hospital. No. As far as race goes, I'm very familiar with being a Cherokee since I'm a Cherokee. No. Except for the fact that, as far as I recall, I'm not necessarily even born around, even though I'm basically racially an Iranian man. I'm basically born in basically Eastern Europe, basically in the Balkans region. I know for myself, I can speak on this very confidently, basically. No. And how I know? Because I do a lot of thinking. I do a lot of discernment and win. Basically, even though it's kind of recent, it's basically like this. It's basically my life to kind of sit quietly in the room and do a lot of meditation as well as read a lot of books, basically, that dovetail with a lot of history. That is very little known about the concept of the Westwood Iranian, that is known as the Iraq, basically. And what I was told by May Iranians is basically being a classic Westward Iranian, basically. As far as I can discern, is basically like Iraq, but I'm not very clear on that whatsoever. Because at the end of the day, I do my own thinking. It's that. No. As far as me in kind of like mainstream Iran, no. That's a bit iffy for me because, well, here's the thing: I tend to have much more lighter hair than the typical Iranian. And yet, if I were to Google anything on Iranians, well, basically clicked on such, basically. And why would I be very much occupied with that? Well, basically the realities of me is basically like this. I'm basically a Caucasian Iranian. Basically an Indo-Iranian Caucasian man, actually. It happens to be kind of like on my 23andMe, basically genetically majority British and Irish. And what's very unusual about other genetic tests, basically, the whole irony of that is this: I don't like pay attention to that. I usually know that my staple genetic company is usually 23andMe. And I look at my haplogroups. It usually deals with being Indo-Aryan and then being step-pastoralists. Connected with Yamnan, except that the more I do my thinking, I usually get the revelation that basically usually has to do with being more Iranic Caucasian. And look, I'm not really an experienced guy usually when it comes to figuring out things for myself. I'm only 27 years old. And the whole point of me speaking is usually just to try and get myself better out of dealing with psychosis, basically. In Afghanistan, I know about the country Afghanistan. I have a video called the Afghan Lap Job. But I'm not really born in Afghanistan. I have cousins that basically, it says twice removed or 3 times removed. What's very interesting is I was told this, I come from a different family, different from what I was raised in. And in the past, I've already uncovered a great deal of, to what extent I'm different from the family I had being raised in Michigan, basically. What I basically have to fall back on is being born in the Balkans, basically. Being born in the Balkans.